Hello there, and welcome to the LinkedIn Marketer Podcast. My name is Karen Hollenbach. Today, I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about understanding the Elevate map. And the reason why I'm doing that is because it's a new year. Everyone's starting to think about, well, some of us are starting to think about our goals for the year ahead. And in the interview series I've been doing, which I really hope you've enjoyed, I've had some lovely feedback over on LinkedIn and some new eyeballs on my profile of people saying, oh, yes, I tuned into this one, I tuned into that one. So thank you. But I do mention the Elevate map in those interviews. So it occurred to me that I should probably take the time to walk you through what the Elevate map is. Now, I have trained LinkedIn. I've trained professionals in how to elevate their LinkedIn presence for, it'll be 16 years this year. And there's some enduring principles really that I use in my training and my mentoring and my online course to help people write their profile and my Substack series, which is a nice quiet part of the internet. We can get away from the noise of LinkedIn and make your way through how to elevate your LinkedIn presence. So I'll talk to you about that at the end. But in all of that, I've noticed that there's really 4 key areas that people should be focused, I encourage people to consider when they're on their LinkedIn journey. Now, if you knew me at the start of when I used to sort of first in the beginning, when I was talking about how I trained, I did call this the LinkedIn journey, but I feel like the Elevate map is a much better way to describe how I help people navigate LinkedIn. So that's what this episode is dedicated to. If you've heard me mention the Elevate map and you're interested, or maybe you just want to know what those sort of 4 phases are and understand where you're at and what you could be doing in each phase, then I think you'll really enjoy this episode. So let's dive in. At Think Bespoke, we help individuals, executive teams, and organizations be seen, heard, and understood for the right reasons. And we really do exist to help Australians unlock their potential and strengthen the communities that you serve. So we imagine an Australia shaped by inclusive, compassionate, and collaborative leadership because, wow, there's a lot going on in the world at the moment. And I really do feel like collaborative leadership is how we are going to make the positive changes that need to happen to help us navigate the turbulent times we're living in. And so really focused on this desire for Australia to be that way. And I know that I've got listeners beyond Australia, so I think this principle does apply in your neck of the woods too. My focus and my team's focus is really working towards delivering education, strategy, and mentoring that elevates quieter and more thoughtful leaders across the various sectors that exist. So this is really the spirit behind the Elevate map. It's a practical, human-centered framework that helps you show up on LinkedIn with clarity and confidence and allows you to be you. Such an obvious statement, but I do feel like there's a lot of shoulds pushed onto people, or 3 steps you must follow, or I don't know why I had an accent then, sorry. And different ways that you should be approaching LinkedIn. It's like, if you follow these key things, this is going to lead to success for you. And I really want to get a little bit deeper than that and give you a thinking framework about how to approach it. And then as a clever individual, you can work it out for yourself based on these ideas. So the Elevate map is iterative by design. So it relies on this idea that we are all the work in progress, as is our LinkedIn profile. And it's a cycle you return to as your goals, your role, your team, or your strategic priorities evolve. Because I think we're all discovering in the world that we're living in, there is nothing more certain than change. And so some of the elements that I'll walk you through may already be familiar. Others might be the missing piece that makes LinkedIn feel purposeful rather than performative for you. So if that's all making sense, let's dive in to the first part of the Elevate map, which is discover. Now, LinkedIn has really become the modern town square of professional life. Reputation, relationships, and relevance all seem to be converging here. So the question's probably not, should I be on LinkedIn? But are the people who matter to you or your organization paying attention here? And that's really the first place I ask all of my clients to start, which is, well, what are your goals for LinkedIn, and who are you trying to actually get into conversations with or influence? And are they spending time on LinkedIn? Because if they're not, don't waste your time. There could be other platforms that are more relevant for you. So for executive teams and organizations, the answer to, are the sort of people that you want here on LinkedIn, the answer is almost always yes. So thinking about key stakeholders, clients, partners, donors, prospective employees, board directors, government bodies, referrers, all of these types use LinkedIn to assess credibility and alignment long before a conversation begins. And that's the really interesting dynamic that exists on LinkedIn. And if you listen to my interview with Ian Hamilton, we talked about thought leadership. We talk about this idea of the hidden audience quite a lot. So for you as an individual, consistent visibility does ultimately build trust on LinkedIn. Now, I'm going to clarify what visibility is when we move towards amplify. Visibility could just be having a great LinkedIn profile that represents you. There's no, not necessarily the pressure that you have to be posting. So just put that sort of on the shelf, and we'll come back to it in a different step. So we're in discover, the first phase at the moment. So visibility keeps you top of mind when the people who may recommend you, collaborate with you, or open doors for you that you currently can't see. And if I think about some of the client conversations I've got into over the years, it's been from people I've worked with previously, ex-bosses, managers, colleagues who never engage with my content on LinkedIn, but obviously are keeping an eye on what I'm doing because they send people my way who want LinkedIn mentoring, their profiles written, or some training for their team. So even 15 minutes a week, your thoughtful 15, which I've talked about in a number of other episodes, particularly in the interview series. So 15 minutes spent reading, engaging, and connecting on LinkedIn can maintain a meaningful professional presence. So if you're in this discover phase, do that thinking, are the people who I want to get into conversations with, or the important stakeholders for me in my role, in my career, in my business right now on LinkedIn? Good. Yes, I need to be here. And then think about curating your feed. And this really helps you shape what you see. And it's a bit of a game changer for your LinkedIn user experience. I've talked about this before. I think I've got a previous episode dedicated to it. A more relevant feed really does create a more useful and far more enjoyable experience. Yes, that's right, folks. You might actually enjoy your time on LinkedIn. Stranger things have happened. So that's the first phase. And I shouldn't say phase 1 or phase 2, because as I mentioned, it's an iterative process. You just keep sort of cycling around depending on where you're at, what's happening in your career and your life. So this next phase is about refining. Your LinkedIn profile is your professional story. It's not a static document like a CV. It is something you should be tending to regularly. You would have heard me before talk about this idea of tending to your LinkedIn garden. And depending on what role you're playing professionally, LinkedIn's also your organization story expressed through your company page and your team's LinkedIn presence. So for you as an individual, refinement means clarity, who you are, the value you bring, and the impact you create. So just take a look at your LinkedIn profile. Is it an accurate representation of where you are right now and where you're heading? Something to think about. Put it on your to-do list. And for organizations, and you might be the person responsible for your organization's LinkedIn presence, or you might want to go and have a chat to the person who is after you've listened to this and get them to listen to this episode, or reach out to me. So for organizations, refinement means coherence, a company page on LinkedIn, and profiles that reflect a shared message, a clear service offering, and a culture that feels credible to those looking in from the outside. And there's this increasing importance. I think it's why I'm training a lot more executive teams these days, that there's consistency and this coherence on what we see on the company page and then what we see in the, especially client-facing and leaders, what their profiles look like. And that's not just the words you're using, but the images you're choosing in your background image, the links and PDFs, documents you're putting in the featured section, etc. And so most people will look you up online before they meet you. Whether you're an executive, a team member, or an organization, your LinkedIn presence should reflect the professional you want them to see. It's your chance to lead the narrative thoughtfully. You are in control of the information available about you on LinkedIn. All right, so the next phase is really about connecting. And I will dedicate, I'm really looking forward to, so depending on when you listen to this and when I schedule the podcast episodes, but there should be an episode with Charlotte Lloyd either coming up or I've already published that really talks about this idea of connecting. So I'm really looking forward to you hearing that conversation in more detail, because connection is the heartbeat of LinkedIn. It's about relationships. And you'll hear me talk often about having a relational sort of approach to LinkedIn, not a transactional approach to LinkedIn. And so what I mean by this is individuals who connect by showing up with curiosity, commenting on relevant conversations, sending personalized messages, checking in with past colleagues, engaging with a sense of generosity, not sort of what can I get out of you, not the ask, but the how can I help, or just genuinely being interested in people. And so what does this mean for organizations? Well, organizations connect by enabling their people to participate in the industry dialogue. So it's really arming your team with a license to show up as professionals. And in some cases, that might be providing them with training or sort of guardrails around the do's and don'ts of how you want them to show up on LinkedIn. But do remember that the individual owns their LinkedIn profile. So these should always be a guide, not a prescription as to exactly how they do it. And it's a real opportunity for some of the your team and your executive team who are comfortable being more visible and proactive on LinkedIn, for them to be reposting with their thoughts, company page updates, proactively engaging with the people who manage your organization's company page, and making sure they're collecting great photos when they're out and about and spending time at industry events. So in this connect phase, it's really thinking about this idea of connection building trust and trust building opportunity. I mean, LinkedIn is ultimately a professional networking platform. It's lots of other things now too. It started as a place where you could find a job. It absolutely still exists as that. It's now also more of a thought leadership platform. It's a place where you can learn. It's a place where organizations are doing news releases, etc. And, showcasing what it means to be an employer of choice, but ultimately it is about connection. And in a world where AI and bots and tech is really a big part of your working life, potentially this human connection, personalizing your invitations to connect, taking the time to look at people's profiles, not using connection requests as a numbers game, is an opportunity for you. You know, the opportunity is to be human. And I laugh about this because I really feel at the moment taking that sort of personalized approach to invitations to connect and being respectful and being curious can really make you stand out. So some of the old-fashioned, or I don't like to call them old-fashioned, but some of the more traditional ways of connecting can really help you stand out on LinkedIn. And so the next phase, and it's not for everyone, it depends on your goals for LinkedIn. You could just stick to those, the previous three phases that I've described, is amplify. So once the foundations are in place, amplification becomes a choice, not an obligation. So some of you may simply want a profile that reflects you accurately and the confidence to read and engage quietly. And I'm here to tell you that is enough for most people. But for some, for others, executives, organizations, thought leaders, community builders, you may choose to step forward and share your insights more visibly. And so amplification can take many forms. It could be short posts, articles, documents, newsletters, videos, events. And do have a listen to the podcast episodes where I've interviewed people about, well, what does it look like for them on LinkedIn, and be inspired by their stories. And so when done with intention rather than pressure, which I do see quite a lot, I've got to show up on LinkedIn. That's what people say to me. And yeah, I get it, but showing up can just be being active, reposting, commenting. It doesn't have to be becoming a content creator. So, amplification strengthens credibility and helps shape the conversations that influence decisions, often long before you enter the room. So, exploring the Elevate map. They're the different phases, the 4 different phases that cycle through how to elevate your LinkedIn presence. I hope this episode has given you a lot to think about. The quiet professionals that think bespoke and I work with rarely crave the spotlight. They simply want to be found for the right reasons and contribute in ways that feel authentic. Now, I believe small intentional actions, cleaning your feed, refreshing your profile, maybe engaging once a week with your thoughtful 15 really can help you move from quietly capable to confidently visible. So they'll help you move from quietly capable to confidently visible without compromising who you are. So the Elevate map is how Think Bespoke and I guide you there, whether you're an individual, a leadership team, or an organization ready to show up with purpose. So thank you for listening to today's episode. Hopefully you can now spend some time tending to your LinkedIn garden. Do check out those other podcast episodes I suggested, and make sure you're subscribing to this podcast wherever you are listening to this now, and I will see you next time.